All right. Hi everyone. How are folks?
Geneva, which room is this? I'm sorry.
This is the room for non-residents.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I believe that we should also have Ryan here, and I'm not quite seeing him. I will assign him.
Do we have the power to assign people?
Yeah, I do have the power to assign someone. I'm the Zoom god. Well, folks, thanks for joining. I think because we're like a relatively small group, it might be nice just to go and do a really quick round of introductions, and we can kind of then get to know each other a little bit better. So hi, I'm Geneva Hooton. I work for the city. Let's see, how about Peter McNutt?
Hi, I'm Peter McNutt. I live in Northeast Lakewood. I ride through that area quite often, so I'd really like to see Perry be improved. So I'm a recreational cyclist. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Jill.
Sorry, I'm having mouse control issues. Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Locantore, Executive Director of the Denver Streets Partnership.
Thanks, Jill. John Ricky.
Hello, my name is John Ricky. I bicycle to get around, and I'm just interested in safe infrastructure everywhere.
Awesome, thanks. Pete. Walking, I love it. Sorry to put you on the spot. Yep.
No worries. These meetings always fall during dog walking time. So Pete Wintersheet and a cyclist for transportation reasons and recreation. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Jose Castro.
Hi, Jose Castro. Relatively new resident of the city. I bike a lot to get around for fun and for transportation, and just listening in and finding out about what's going on.
Great. And Elena.
Hi. My lighting is a little off, but Elena McCall, grants manager with the Colorado Department of Transportation's Highway Safety Office. Thanks.
Thanks, Elena. And Miss Libby Kaiser.
Good evening. I am Libby Kaiser, and I also work for the city.
Thanks, Libby. And then this one I just see as the Gingy.
Hi, sorry, I don't know how to change my name, so it just popped up. My name is Jason Gardner, and I use my bike to ride around town. This is an area I ride through with some frequency and generally avoid.
All right, thanks. Kayla.
Hey everyone, Kayla Gilbert. I work with DOTI in the Office of Community and Business Engagement. I live in Westwood, so I bike through this area when I commute to work.
Awesome, thank you. And David?
Hi, I live up in the Highlands, but travel around Denver by bike quite often and just want to be safe and often travel through this area.
Okay, thanks, David. And Daisy?
Hi everyone, Daisy Rocha Vasquez, Council Aide for Councilwoman Jimmy.
Awesome, thank you, Daisy. And then from the project team with me, I will kick it over to, you all have met Kevin. Kevin, give a little wave. Gave us our pro Conveo tutorial. And then Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Taylor. I'm a DOTI planner on the project team with Geneva.
Thanks. And then Mr. Ryan Mulligan.
Hey everybody, Ryan Mulligan, taking notes in today's session, but I'm on the design side of the house for these corridors.
Awesome, thanks. All right, well, thank you all for putting up with me. I appreciate it. I think it feels a little bit nicer. It makes me feel like we are in an actual room. So we have 45 minutes or so just to have a discussion. Would love to know if there are any questions, if there are any particular designs that you all would want us to go into. We have the roll plots and we can dig into those. Yeah, we're here for if you have questions.
Could we hear more about the vertical elements that separate bicycle areas from automobile traffic?
Yeah, definitely. So on the Perry protected bike lane portion, so that's between 6th and Bayard, the vertical elements will be a combination of a rubberized curb. They're black, so it's pretty long, they're black curbs, and then they will have plastic bollards that have a reflective piece at the top. And so it includes a combination of both the curbs and the vertical. And Taylor or Ryan, can one of you pull up the Perry roll plot for us? I think we can kind of share what that cadence of the vertical elements would look like.
And you can also see it in real life on 13th Avenue, which just got installed, right?
Yes, exactly.
Here is my screen. Can you see it?
No,
Yes?
not.
No. Oh, I have to hit share. Different than Teams.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so this shows it really well that the little black lines is where a curb would be, and then the dots is where a vertical bollard would be.
Did you spell out any secret messages in Morse code while you were putting them in?
I like bikes. No, no secret message. But you can see that we break the vertical elements before a driveway for pretty obvious reasons. We also break them at intersections for obvious reasons. And so that's why you'll see some portions where there are more vertical elements than others, and that's just because of where the driveway access points are hitting.
When and if individual lots are redeveloped, will those driveways be reapproved, or will they be forced to move car access to the back so that we can complete the lane?
That's a good question. I don't think that I don't think that that is something that happens very frequently in especially single family residential neighborhoods, John. I think for the most part, if there isn't a current driveway access and that house sells, the house would sell and the new owner would still have access to the driveway. And I'm not sure that any of these lots on Perry would be prime for development because I don't think that they are zoned that way. But that's an interesting question I will ask.
Thank you.
Yep.
Eve, I have like a general question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there a point when at the point where like a certain time every year that new projects are identified and then scheduled for the whole design process and input process? Like, how does that whole process work?
Yeah, Elena, that's a very good question. There are a bunch of different ways that projects get selected. Some of them are selected and then go into a bond package like this project. So when the 2017 bond went together, there were a number of projects kind of across the city and in particular, and so that we had some good distribution to lots of neighborhoods. And then that went into the package to get funded. And then, from there we went into planning and now we're into design. We look at when projects are on our paving list. For that, we have a big old GIS file of all of the next 5 years of paving projects. And then we go through and we run an analysis to see, okay, do we have any projects that overlap with our paving streets? So if we are already going to be tearing up the street and repaving and repainting, we may as well try to put down the correct infrastructure. So that's one opportunity where if the stars align and it's the right facility type on the right kind of street and it's enough of an overlap, then those projects go in. And if there's also funding, we can then go and kind of put them into the plan, design, construct timeline. And right now, the way that most of the other projects that aren't bond funded and are not paving projects are mostly through the community transportation networks. And for those on the call who are not as familiar with those currently are 3 large areas of the city where we are working on improving multimodal transportation, and we have bike projects identified. And those are the ones that we are moving forward into construction. So in terms of kind of the crystal ball of what does that look like moving forward? There is a new community transportation network in Globeville, Elyria, Swansea that was just approved by the RISE bond and by the Denver voters. So I anticipate that to be an area of focus. But other than that, that's kind of how things get done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Geneva, can you say more about the citywide study you mentioned regarding speed humps that led to the decision to replace those with other traffic calming measures?
Yes. So that, Jill, came about when, as we were working on CTNs and that we have a number of corridors, we had a number of speed humps identified. And I think one of the things that the city wants to make sure is that we are really strategic and smart about how we're rolling those out. In particular, that it works for not just the plan or the design, but really for our operations crew and for those who are going to be maintaining them. So there are still corridors that are identified to have speed humps, and those will be going in the next year. And the plan is to really be evaluating how effective they are. What does that look like in terms of speed mitigation and comfort and some other metrics? And then from that, I think we will be able to start saying, okay, is this something that we can just very easily roll into our toolbox as a city and use on certain streets, not every street? And what does that look like? When does that happen? So that's why they were removed from these corridors at this time. And in lieu of the speed humps, we have pinch points and mid-block chicanes and other ways of trying to mitigate those mid-block speeds.
Can you say a little bit more about the timeline for studying the effectiveness of where they will be installed and then when they might be able to be retroactively added to other corridors?
Yep. I don't know the timing well enough to tell you right now, but I can, I think Ryan is taking notes for us. I can get you some of that information after the meeting.
Thanks. And one more question, where you're doing pinch points, are there any cases where the proposal is to effectively narrow it to one lane at the pinch point?
Yeah, that's what it does. Can we bring up the Tennyson? Do we have pinch points on Tennyson? We have them on other corridors for sure. And the pinch point design narrows it to 12 feet. So it really is only for one vehicle to go through at any time. 2 bikes could go through, but only 1 car.
Awesome. I think you guys should start calling those yield streets.
Ooh, I like that. Yield streets. And for those who have yet to see one of these in action, we have one up at North 51st and Zuni by the 51st and Zuni Park. And that is one of the first pinch points that we have, at least in Northwest Denver.
And at those pinch points, to follow up with Jill, could you put a sign that says yield to bikes just to make it super clear?
It's a good question. I'll talk to the design team about that because I've heard from others that it, particularly as we've installed and are seeing how the one at 51st and Zuni is working, that the yield behavior when there is a bike and a car, that the driver is occasionally taking the right of way rather than yielding to the bike. So let me ask about that. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, Geneva, one thing I'm noticing is that there's like so much new types of infrastructure that people never learned when they started to drive originally. And so sometimes the new infrastructure, they don't really know what it means, especially young drivers. So when I see some of these new things, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Then I'm like, how many people actually know what that means?
Yes, Elena, that is a huge, I think that is a huge opportunity for us as a city to be working on educating. And I think we have a lot of room for growth in that area.
Okay.
Can the design be made unambiguous?
Well, John, I think that we are consistently trying to make our designs as unambiguous as possible, with the exception of times where we actually really like ambiguity. So think about a shared street, for example, like a truly like a Wunnerf kind of shared street where you never are guaranteed that you are going and that there is a little bit more of the human interaction. So our goal is to create streets that are safer and more comfortable, and especially on our neighborhood bikeways, that people walking feel like they can are more comfortable crossing the street. I don't think that we can eliminate ambiguity just because we are humans and this is the built environment, but I think that we are working on trying to eliminate ambiguity and to make it clear what these streets are for and who they're benefiting. Other questions about the design?
I saw that you removed one diverter, but as I've experienced on 35th Avenue Bikeway, even just like the possibility of having a giant truck behind you is stressful, and I'm an experienced cyclist. I was wondering why there weren't more diverters used in the design rather than the traffic circles and pinch points, which kind of puts you even more into conflict with vehicle traffic.
Yeah. Based on the Denver bike design guidelines, we have certain thresholds for when diversion is really necessary to consider a street still a neighborhood bikeway, and to create a neighborhood bikeway. On Tennyson and on 7th, the volumes are not, they're not really even that close to that threshold. 7th in particular has a very low volume. Tennyson also has not as high of a volume as we would see in an instance where we would need to do something like divert. And the reason for not adding in a ton of diverters is because it does have impacts on access, not only for fire, but certainly for neighbors themselves of trying to get to their own streets and to their own homes.
Diverters do not stop access from people in cars. They simply make them take a different route.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But there are other network impacts. If we add so many diverters onto a street, then we see more people onto side streets, which may not be as signalized. So there are a number of, I would say, network balancing issues, but really
so you're balancing the safety of bicyclists against the network, as opposed to prioritizing the safety of bicyclists.
So John, I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you on this one, but I will just remind you that the volumes on Tennyson and 7th are very comfortable in the neighborhood bikeway thresholds. So that's why diverters are not included in this design.
Can I add to maybe Geneva that all these traffic calming elements, this the curb extensions, the pinch points, the median islands, those kind of act as a soft diversion. While they don't like physically put a barrier in the middle of the road to disallow vehicles from traveling through, it really discourages vehicles from using Tennyson as a cut-through route and maybe encourages them to use one of the other parallel routes instead. So we'll likely see some reduction in vehicle volumes just with these speed diverting tactics.
Do you have counts on 35th from before and after the diversions where the pinch points and circles were put in that shows that?
Vehicle counts, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know, Geneva?
Yeah. Hey, John, I think that this is a conversation that is good to have, but I don't think that this is quite the right room to be having that in. I would recommend that you sign up for office hours or shoot us an email and we can chat about that a little bit more. Anyone have other questions about Perry Tennyson 7th designs that we can answer?
I have a general question, or just kind of just for see if you can just touch base on this, Geneva.
Yep.
is if you can talk about the evaluation of bike lane usage for these projects. I think that would also be helpful for the general group.
Yes, definitely. So, and actually I'm going to kick it over to Taylor, who is working on our citywide count program, which is one of the ways that we are really understanding where people are riding and how they're riding.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. I missed the question. The audio was a little.
Daisy was asking about the kind of like the evaluation for projects. So how are we making sure that people are using, and Daisy, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but how are we making sure that people are using these streets once we've built something out?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So yeah, we are starting to install permanent counters in locations throughout the city. This isn't one of the locations, but we're installing permanent counters that'll be collecting data all day and all night, as well as selecting count locations for short duration counts so that we can do this kind of evaluation. And while we don't have enough resources and time and energy to count every segment of every new project that we build, we're definitely trying to do as many of these as possible in as many areas of the city as possible so that we can come back in future years and say, hey, we increased bicycle volumes in this part of town by X%, or, and kind of report out on this kind of thing in the future.
Taylor, are those recording pedestrians as well, since some of the improvements are intended to improve pedestrian comfort?
Yeah, pedestrians are really hard to count with technology. The technology is certainly improving, but it's a little more labor intensive to sit there with the clipboard or with the video and count pedestrians. So that's not really a part of the count program that I am working on. I don't know if Geneva has any other insight as to if we have other pedestrian count programs.
Yeah, and Jill, I know. I hear you. I know for certain on our trails that I believe that we do have as a city and with DPR, infrared counters and inductive loop, where you can then, for those who are less familiar with that, infrared is usually counting both people walking and biking, and then the loops are counting bikes. So you can subtract one from the other to kind of infer what pedestrian volumes are at. But that works because it's on a trail. You have less kind of noise in that. I think that that's something that we should be looking into, Taylor, and maybe that's something that we can talk about is how do we start counting pedestrians on our neighborhood bikeways because of the kind of true multimodal benefits that we're talking about. I think it's a great question, Jill.
And on the bike counts, are you doing any assessment of who is biking to really get at the question of, are you truly providing a high comfort facility? So you're seeing kids or, non-usual suspect mammals biking
that would
around?
be amazing. But unfortunately, yeah, tubes and inductive loops can't differentiate whether you're male, female, old or younger, black, white, Hispanic, whatever.
So even with the temporary ones are automated as well. They're not manual.
Yeah, we're using tubes generally, sometimes videos, but the ability to deduce somebody's gender, age, race, origin via video is difficult.
Can it tell weight? Like, could it tell if it was something that was only like 20 pounds, for example, like a child?
I don't think that the technology can do that.
That was random, but I thought I would throw that out.
No, that's a good thought, but I don't think that we can do that yet in this world.
But something to add to that, Jill, Taylor and I are working on a grand list of questions that we would love to start engaging our graduate students help on as a capstone project. And I think that you have just helped us to identify one, which is to really understand, especially for our neighborhood bikeways, especially those that are going to be built as part of this huge build out next year, who is using them and how does that factor into the comfort? So once again, Jill, great questions.
And I would just love to see that tied back to the numeric standards you referenced earlier in terms of typically diverters aren't warranted unless vehicular volumes reach a certain level. are those levels set properly, or do they need to be reconsidered in order to ensure that it's truly a high comfort facility?
Yep, that's great.
Grad student.
Geneva, I don't know if I can ask a random question related to that. For the Highway Safety Office, we have funding every year to do like a seatbelt safety survey. I'm wondering if the city has any funding to do every year a bike count in the city or a walk count in the city.
Kind of like like what are the bike miles traveled question?
Yeah, or even if
Yeah.
what they do with the seatbelt surveys, they have a ton of people observe manual entry, who's biking, they do a count.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do it for driving, but I don't know if you would do that at all for the city, do a citywide every year count of bikes in certain areas. You know, you can do like a random sampling.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I'll definitely pass it to Taylor. One thing I will say is we have a lot of data on how few people are biking in Denver for their trips. I mean, we have the commuter data, which I think especially after COVID is fraught, but it's always been fraught. That is one measure. We also can look at and say, we have a lot of streets. We have plenty of collectors and arterials that are barriers to people biking. We have survey data. We have a lot of ways of understanding where people are hesitant to bike and the reasons for being hesitant to bike. I think something like that could be interesting for establishing a baseline so that we can then kind of come back and look at how all of this infrastructure has helped grow the baseline. But I'm not quite sure how it would be so helpful to understand if we already know that we have a long ways to go and getting more people to bike, how that would help.
Okay.
Yeah. Taylor, though, do you have thoughts on that?
Not a lot. I mean, yeah, like you said, like we have data from the census and things like that, and we have national household travel surveys and things like that we can certainly like pull from and do some analysis. But yeah, I don't know about. Also, it'd be quite funding intensive, I'm sure, to do a survey of that caliber citywide.
Yeah, you'd have to have specific funding for it. Okay.
Okay. Well, why don't we go back, if Taylor or Ryan, if you can pull up the slide deck and we can just go through that last slide of kind of next steps. And then if anyone wants to stay on and continue chatting, we'll be here. Or if you would like to go and enjoy an evening at home, you can also leave the Zoom meeting. We're not going to bring everyone back together just because we thought that some rooms might not have as much discussion as some others. Awesome, thank you. So the Conveyo input is going to be open for these 3 corridors through December 19th. So that gives folks a little over a month, including the holiday, to do that. So please share that with your neighbors and other folks. And just a gentle reminder that we are at 60% design. So the kinds of tweaks that we're able to make at this point are smaller. Something like, yeah, this corridor, this alignment is not right, is going to be a lot harder for us to address. So the more detailed that the comments can be, really the more helpful for us and the team. If you have questions, feel free to email us at the project team at bikes@denvergov.org. You can schedule office hours at the bit.ly there. We would recommend that you go to those 2 options. If for whatever reason you are not comfortable with email or office hours, you can also give the project hotline a call and we will return your phone calls. So the goal is really to collect feedback over the next month, and then we're going to be wrapping this into final design, which we hope to finish by the spring. And then construction is intended to start as soon as next fall of 2022 and will likely go into 2023. So with that, again, happy to stay on and answer any questions that you may have. But if you also want to go and do something else, you are welcome to do that.
Geneva, why did southbound cyclists at Tennyson and Colfax not get their own lane? I know there's the bulb out there, but northbound got a lane without a bulb out.
That is, yes, thank you. And it's oriented a little bit funny. So just for folks who are looking at this, one of the reasons, John, is, if I'm remembering correctly, it's that we just didn't have quite enough space on either side of the street to provide a dedicated bike lane and to provide the travel lane and the curb extensions. So that's why here, with only 26 feet offered as the designs are, and we're even trying to narrow them further with the West Colfax project, there just isn't room for 2 travel lanes and 2 bike lanes dedicated.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you.
Geneva, are these improvements part of the West Colfax pedestrian and transit project?
Yes, those 2 curb extensions on the north side of the street are part of that project.
Awesome, thanks.
Could southbound get a bike box maybe?
So John, when we do bike boxes, and this has changed in the city, like for instance, at 35th and Irving, when I worked on the concept design, we included a big old bike box, but the thinking on how we use them has changed to that. For the most part, we try to use them when we are facilitating a left-hand turn, because then it provides a really clear opportunity for someone biking to get out in front of a car. As there is not a bike lane on West Colfax, we would not be encouraging anyone to be turning onto Colfax. So therefore the bike box wouldn't make as much sense.
Gotcha.
Geneva, random question. I can't go on here. Do the bikes get is there a bike light, like for bikes to go first maybe at this intersection?
Good question, Elena. And so the existing signal does include an automatic pedestrian recall. So it's not triggered by by someone at the signal. So I don't believe that we are including detection because it's not needed, because the signals are already going automatically.
Do PEDs then get does it turn for PEDs first before the light turns green then? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is instead of it going, you know how when you come to some intersections and the only way to be able to cross the street is when you press the PED recall?
Yeah, you're saying it's automatic.
It's automatic. I don't believe that there is a leading pedestrian interval.
Leading, that's the word I was trying to find.
I don't think that there is one at this intersection, but we should look into that.
Because that's the only thing that, because I guess John kind of mentioned it earlier, is, a car kind of pushing its way ahead of you to go first here, and you're narrowing it so that, the cars have to really make a correct turn on, at least onto Colfax. But I can still see where a vehicle would rush to get ahead of a bike here and try to go first and then weasel around us. And so I'm wondering if a lead signal, even for a PED, as a bike, I would take the PED lead and go first to try and avoid cars turning on and off of Colfax, because, people trying to get onto Colfax are really they're in a hurry.
No, that's a great suggestion. Let me, we will definitely talk to the West Colfax team. I'm not sure if they are including any signal modifications, and if not, we can see if we can include it in this project.
Okay. Yeah, because for some of these too, and I don't know if this will be changed on here, I'm seeing some lights where the PEDs don't really have a lot of time to cross. Some intersections are getting better and giving PEDs more time, but some major intersections are still on this old school time. So I don't know, you never know until you get up to one how much time you have.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, good question. I can say that the curb extensions here, because they are coming into Colfax or onto Colfax, that is shortening the crossing distance, which is a good thing. So whether or not the signal timing is going to be adjusted, because it's kind of a calculation between how long the crossing is and all these different factors. If it's not adjusted, then that is a win. And then pedestrians will have more time to cross, even if the crossing is shorter.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the West Colfax project includes transit signal prioritization,
Okay.
which means the buses might be able to actually trigger the light to turn green for them, which makes it even more complicated for pedestrians, like including things like LPIs. But it would be great to remind them to think about pedestrians and whatever they're doing with the signals.
Yes, that's a really good reminder.
Geneva, I'm looking at the roll plots, and I'm wondering, is there any vertical deflection included in the traffic circles or the little triangles that lead up to them?
Yeah, so in those triangles, there is no vertical. I don't think we have one at 16th. I think we might have to go the other direction, Taylor. Yeah, so that part is just paint in the yielding triangle. But the vertical is in the circle itself. Yeah, thank you.
And as well, on the bulb outs that you've got painted there, I see that the coming up to the intersection has posts, but within the intersection where you've painted triangles, there are no posts. Why is that?
Wait, can you repeat that question, John?
Where you've got the bulb out pinch points painted, you've got posts leading up to the intersection, but in the triangles within the intersection, there are no posts.
Yeah. So one of the reasons for that on here is because of, do you see those gray stripes? Those are
concrete.
Those are valley gutters, and we can't put vertical elements in valley gutters.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons as well is that the we're running turn templates on these, and so I know as we are working through design that we are including vertical elements where we can, and we're removing them where it does not work. Ryan, do you have anything to add about why there isn't any vertical in those corners?
Well, in those corners, there's a couple considerations. So one, it's the auto turn templates that Geneva mentioned. And sometimes it's the length of those turns as well. The standard that Denver has set, I believe it was, if you can't fit 2 flex posts in there, so it's at least a 5-foot stretch, that doesn't make sense either. So the assumption, I haven't dove into this quarter yet for the design, but my assumption there, John, is that that's just not enough distance to meet that standard.
When I was in New York City, I noticed that at some of those corner treatments, instead of having bollards, they would have almost like little tiny mini speed humps. So that if you drove over that space, it would, cause your car to go up and you would notice that you were driving over something you weren't supposed to be driving over. Has Denver considered anything like that?
And Jill, we definitely have those on, for instance, the 13th Avenue protected bike lane. We have them on parts of, I think, 15th PBL. I don't know if we have included them in curb extension designs yet. I think it's a good idea, but I don't know if that has been an application in this particular context. And then one other thing, John, why there aren't any vertical elements adjacent to the yellow thing that you're seeing, which is a fire hydrant, is because we can't have any vertical elements next to fire hydrants.
Yep, that one I got. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But why not in the lead up to the traffic circle?
So that again kind of goes back to turn templates, and we try pretty hard not to have just one vertical element or very few vertical elements in a area because they tend to not hold up very well. But the bigger thing is that it makes it impossible for certain larger trucks to go around those circles and to make it into that particular width. And so as part of the design, it's not hardened, as we would say. And Ryan, it sounds like you have something to add.
Yeah, to your point, Geneva, the biggest point or the biggest vehicle, John, is a long fire truck. And so that's really the issue, is making sure that we're not putting something in that, you know, if and when a fire truck needs to travel through this intersection, they're just going to run them over anyway. And, you know, so that's the biggest concern that we've run into in some of the other corridors that we've already moved through design, you know, further northwest, that have traffic circles with the approaching triangles.
I assume this is another office hours conversation.
Sure. All right. Any other questions, maybe from folks we haven't heard as much from? Okay.
Stare at each other's faces, questions will come up.
Awesome.
I have
All
a
right.
quick question. Is the meeting tomorrow going to be kind of a very similar setup to today?
Yes, it will be nearly identical. The main room where folks will stay will be the room related to Perry. We'll have a breakout room for Virginia, another for Tennessee, and then another for folks who don't live in like either really close to one of those corridors.
Awesome. Okay.
Geneva, it's Tejon tomorrow.
Sorry,
Yeah.
what did I say?
The Perry, it's okay. Got too many corridors here.
It's so true. Thank you, Jill. And hi, Frank, in the background. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate you coming and sticking around and asking good questions. And I think with that, we will, what about Tennessee Ave? Hey, oh, Roy, good to see you. I didn't realize that was you. So Roy, tomorrow's meeting is gonna be about Tennessee. And for that one, there will be one room about Tennessee. So we can talk about it then if you would like. Okay. Are the current maps available? So yep, Roy, on if someone can add the bit.ly into the chat. So Roy, you are able to go in and you can look at the concept for Tennessee and provide your comments there. That one is live as of today. I'm nearly positive. Is that right, Taylor? Yes. Yes.
Yeah, everything is live now except for Irving and Bates.
Bates, perfect. Okay, thank you. So yep, Roy, go ahead and do that. And then if you still have questions, I think you have our emails and you can shoot us a question. Okay, great. So everyone, I'm going to leave this room and go back into the main room. And I think that you are also free to do that, or you can leave the meeting. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.